Welcome to Every Horror Movie on Netflix. We're here again. We're the show that watches and reviews and discusses and all that stuff for every single horror movie on Netflix.
We are the show.
We are the show. And
it watches and discusses and does all that stuff.
And who are we? I'm Chris.
I'm Patrick.
I'm Steven.
And we're here. We usually do an alphabetical order. Long-time fans of the show will know we always do alphabetical order.
And we're barely breaking from it this time.
We're barely breaking for it, but we did spin the wheel of death last episode, and Steven got to pick a movie to watch of our own volition.
Mm-hmm.
And he picked...
Or mine, at least.
He picked Before I Wake, the Mike Flanagan opus. And tell us about this movie a little bit and why you picked it.
As opposed to something further down the alphabet.
Yeah,
because I saw it recently. This is a movie I've known about for quite a while. I wouldn't say I'm a big Mike Flanagan fan pre-Gerald's Game. Which
you wouldn't consider yourself a fan-again.
Not a fan again. Definitely not after this one. No, this movie, so it was made several years ago. I think it was supposed to come out right after Oculus, before Hush.
Yes.
So like 2013, Relativity Media, the company that financed this movie, went out of business. So it got released overseas, not even a DVD over here.
Relativity is done?
I guess so.
Damn.
This is their swan song.
So Netflix kind of co-opted it. It's another one of those movies that it says a Netflix original film. It's not. This movie was made in like 2014, 2015, and we're just finally getting it now. So I was just kind of curious to see how it would hold up when these types of things sort of sit on the shelf for a while. You wonder, our culture changes so quickly, and I think technology is changing so quickly. My curiosity was, is this movie going to look like it was made 3 years ago? We can get into that later, but I was curious. Mike Flanagan is one of the few people in the horror industry now that I think we can legitimately say is kind of an auteur. He's a name that people recognize. He's got his own brand. He's like Netflix's in-house horror guy now. So why did I pick this movie? Because I watched it a few weeks ago, and I think I texted Patrick that I thought it was How Did This Get Made level bad, and I wanted to give it a second shot.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
Wow, we're just right up front with...
I said I wanted to give it a second shot. I'm not telling you how I felt.
So would you view it, cue it, or screw it?
The first viewing, view it. It was hilarious. I thought it was a comedy. Second time around, we'll get into it, but that's why I picked it. And also, I'm representing Flanagan a little bit today with my Haunting of Hill House t-shirt, because he is currently working on a 10-part miniseries for Netflix of the beloved Shirley Jackson book, which I'm pretty stoked for.
And Mike Flanagan, he's someone I want to like so badly. He made one of my favorite horror movies of the last couple years, which was Ouija Origin of Evil. I don't know if it would still be my favorite if I watched it again, but I had a great time with that movie. Whenever you watch a Mike Flanagan movie, you know it's going to be better than average. Or at least so I thought. But he's a very frustrating director because he seems like he's perpetually on the verge of something great and then fucks it up in every movie.
You would say he fucks something up in every movie?
Yeah.
Huh. Because I feel... I like Mike Flanagan. I don't like Oculus very much. I'm going to withhold judgment on Before I Wake until we get to rating it. But I really like Gerald's Game.
But he shit the bed in Gerald's Game.
Yeah, but that's Stephen King's fault.
It's not Stephen King's fault.
He could have remade... Yeah,
as a filmcast, he could have chosen to just drop that unnecessary epilogue, which I do feel like it's interesting. Off-cast, Chris made a comment about the Moonlight Man regarding something that occurs in this film, which I don't think is a spoiler. And I do feel like there's a chunk of this movie that very much gave me kind of the unnecessary epilogue.
Absolutely. It makes the exact same unnecessary epilogue mistakes as Moonlight Man in Gerald's Game.
I think so. I think he's a filmmaker who, he's got good ideas. He's clearly very indebted to King, and you can see that. Many times watching this movie, I thought, this would work better as a short story. This feels like a Stephen King short story that never existed. I just don't feel like he's that recognizable of a filmmaker. I don't think the level of craft is quite there. I think in Gerald's Game, he definitely kind of upped his game, because I can't think of a better word, so to speak. So it's interesting to look back 3 years to see how much he's really developed, just as far as being able to move the camera and do the job of a director.
Yeah.
And I do feel like he made a lot of the same mistakes in this movie that he continues to make.
Yeah, he's my kind of director, though, in that he's not... I mean, I appreciate visuals a lot, but I'm a lot more about performance and narrative, and he likes the kind of narratives that I like, and he has the connection with actors that I like, and I think that's why I respond to him a lot. I also heard a pretty lengthy interview with him on, I think it was the Empire Filmcast, and he just seems like his head's in the right place. Like, I like listening to him talk.
He sounds like a cool guy.
He sounds like a great guy. And I mean, I can identify flaws in probably pretty much every one of his movies that I've seen, but on the whole, I've enjoyed just about all of them, except Oculus. That was the first Mike Flanagan movie I saw, and wasn't big on that.
Didn't turn your knob.
Did not turn my knob, to reference a little joke we had before the cast.
I don't like Oculus at all, but he's a very technically competent director. Like, everything looks and sounds good, and the performances are good and stuff. It's just he makes some creative choices that I just hate in every movie.
Did he write Gerald's Game?
I don't know.
He must have, because I mean the legend goes that when he was working on, I think, Oculus, far back, or even has anybody seen Absentia?
No.
It's a movie he made before Oculus. I don't know if it's like a feature film or not. Apparently, he used to carry around a copy of Stephen King's Gerald's Game with him when he would go to meetings. Like, that's in his back pocket. He wants to make this movie. So he must have written the screenplay.
He wrote it, with another guy. Him and another guy wrote it.
Who's the other guy? Because I think he co-wrote this too.
Jeff Howard.
It's a simple story. You got a young couple. I say young couple. They're a normal-aged couple. They've lost a son in a...
What's normal age? That sounds pretty ageist there.
Yeah, right. They, I don't know, they're like, upper 30s, mid-30s, and they have a 40? Who gives a fuck?
Mid-40s. Thomas Jane is mid-40s, trying to look like he's in his mid-30s.
Okay.
Oh, man, Thomas Jane with some fucking hair.
Is that a wig?
I don't know, but it doesn't look good.
He looks like he's auditioning for like the Hercules TV series with Kevin Sorbo.
Well, I thought it looked great.
His hair?
I thought he looked great and the hair looked great.
All right.
But yeah, it's a married couple, and they've lost a son to a household accident, and they're grieving, and as part of their grief, they take in a foster child, and the foster child, it turns out, has the uncanny ability to, when he sleeps, summon things from his imagination, which are sometimes good things, and there's sometimes bad things.
Well, yeah, his dreams basically come to life.
His dreams come to life
as he sleeps. Yeah.
And he's limited to dreaming about certain things.
What we see seems to have some limitations. And then the foster family, kind of uses this to their own advantage for a bit, to kind of bring back reminders of their dead son, and then it kind of, you find out maybe sometimes you shouldn't. It's the same moral as any good Stephen King story. Sometimes dead is better,
It's very Pet Sematary.
Yeah, leave your dead son in the past. Don't try to bring him back through some other kid's dreams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the two leads in this movie, we've got Kate Bosworth as the wife, and Thomas Jane, who I love. Thomas Jane, he can do no wrong except for that fucking haircut.
All right.
As the bereaved couple.
What do you love Thomas Jane for? I don't disagree. I just have never seen him in anything where he that I can think of where I was like, wow.
I just feel like it's always a delight to see him. I mean, the thing that immediately springs to mind is Boogie Nights.
Oh yeah, who does he play in Boogie Nights?
He's in sort of like when they sort of cut to the 80s, the Coke scene with Alfred Molina.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And the boy in this movie, a pre-fame, pre-Oscar nomination, Jacob Tremblay. From Room, who I think is great. One thing in these movies about creepy kids, or kids that have creepy abilities, or that sort of instill fear in the adults.
Yeah, he's not a creepy kid.
He's not a creepy kid. I guess that's what I'm getting to. He's not a creepy kid at all. He's really endearing and really kind of charming. There are a couple of scenes where nothing overtly scary is happening, and he kind of did creep me out just by being himself. But I like the way this movie handled him as, I don't know, a real person who's got a problem, just like the adults.
He's a victim as much as anybody from his condition.
That kid is amazing. He was great in Room, and I just don't understand. I read about, with this movie, someone had to sit down with him and explain each scene to him verbally because he wasn't really old enough to read the script or get it. And I just don't get how a kid can be that good. He just seems so natural and very sweet, but also creepy, as you guys said, at the same time. Yeah. He's great.
A lot of it's the framing. We see a lot in this movie from, it's one of the things I like most about it, in movies that involve sort of again, I don't want to use the word creepy kid again, but he's sort of playing against that archetype. You don't see a lot from the kid's POV, and there's a lot in the framing in this movie that really shows us the house, how big this house is around him. Often we see him in these like extreme wide shots when he's like going down to get a soda out of the fridge. That's one of my favorite shots in the whole movie. Mm-hmm. And this little tiny person in this big room just throws one glance at the camera and has so much menace, doing almost nothing. Mm-hmm. I mean, he literally just turns and looks toward the adults, or we're seeing it from their point of view, and it's creepy as hell. We understand that this kid is in a world that is that is big, it's kind of monstrous, and it hasn't really served him very well in his life so far.
Yeah, because this is a kid who's been passed through foster care several times.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's the first scene of the movie. You see one of his previous foster parents in a bad way.
Pulls a gun on him. I mean, it's the first thing we see in the movie. We see this cute little kid sleeping, and there's a man sweating, holding a gun, about to shoot the kid, and the kid, wakes up, and so that doesn't end up happening.
So right off the bat that there's some reason, there's something dark with this kid, and he's been passed through foster care, and all his foster parents have been bad situations, and it's like any sort of relationship. If you keep having bad breakups, maybe you're the problem. The kid seems to be the problem.
Yeah, but it's not like he's Damien, I mean, I guess he is menacing in some scenes, but it's never like he's possessed. Anytime he seems angry or projects some negative emotion, you get the sense of where that's coming from. He's not an evil kid.
No, you're never afraid of the kid, I don't think.
No.
Yeah, no.
No, if anything, he's seen as an opportunity to everyone around him until things start to kind of fall apart.
Yeah.
Kate Bosworth is back on her bullshit, drugging people, trying to build a perfect family, as seen in Amnesia.
Oh, man, I realized, and I never realized this before, I learned this from HQ Trivia. There's a question on HQ Trivia about heterochromia. I never realized before that Kate Bosworth has different colored eyes, like David Bowie. Yeah.
Well, listen, if you want to join HQ Trivia, use my referral code, Elefino, ELEPHINO 17. Thank you very much.
You could win $8.21.
Hey, Chris, why is your code Elefino?
Steve, what do you get when you cross an elephant and a rhino?
Oh, gee, I don't know. An Elefino?
Elefino!
Whoa.
It's my favorite joke.
Wow, amazing. The other cast member in this movie that I was like, oh, was Annabeth Gish, because I just started watching season 9 of The X-Files, in which she plays probably one of the least beloved characters on X-Files, if I'm not mistaken.
She has a fan
Chris?
following.
Really?
She has a following.
Really?
Yeah, but,
all right.
she's
fine, actually. I mean, she's a decent
She's fine in X-Files. She was brought on as like a potential new lead for the X-Files in the 9th season. And,
Wait, who does she play? Is she the
Reyes?
She's the social worker.
The social worker.
Yeah, in this movie, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't care about X-Files.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, early on, this film does not hesitate to explain its themes to us, and it starts very, very early with the concept of sleeping and dreaming, and explaining to us what insomnia means, what somnia means. Kate Bosworth is in a support group for I think the support group is dedicated to parents who have lost children, right? Yeah. And there's a line that the support group leader says, insomnia simply means no dreams. And what is a child if not our dreams?
God, I mean, this stuff is just so cringeworthy. That's why the first time I saw it, I will admit, the first time I saw this film was under the influence of marijuana. And I just love to say it that way. And I just had, there was so much about this that was just so, I could tell that on the page it seemed brilliant. In execution, it didn't work so well. I mean, this movie it's directed with all the skill of like a workman television director.
Yeah, it reminded me of like a faith-based movie or something.
Oh, that's perfect. I kind of had that feeling as well. And like these support groups, which again are just a cliche that we see in any film.
It's a crutch,
grief, especially in horror films. It is a crutch, and I honestly feel like I could have done without any of those those scenes, they didn't tell me anything about the relationships between the central characters that I couldn't have inferred through their behavior.
I don't think that's a fault of the direction, though. I mean, I feel like that's just bad writing. Like, that
It's bad
line
writing. I mean,
is a bad line.
They were not directed particularly interestingly either, but yeah, it's bad
I
writing.
liked the
too.
direction for the most part.
What did you like about it?
I mean, I thought it was competently directed. It didn't stand out to me as
Sorry.
like TV direction.
Just being a dick.
But no,
You liked
I
it?
mean, what about that scene did you dislike about the direction?
It just looked like every other support group scene I've seen in the film. It was just sort of like, shot of the group. I don't know. It just was very kind of like getting generic coverage of the scene. Like, it didn't feel special in any such way. The direction is not the issue. It's the writing.
And it wasn't an interesting scene, and the direction didn't make it interesting. I mean, what can you do with that scene? Basically, they're like, here's a bunch of information. Here's an exposition dump in the form of like a Q&A with a support group guy. And I was thinking as I was watching the scene, I was like, I'm actually kind of bored right now. That's the first time in the movie where I started to like, my mind started to wander. And I was like, and a lot of this stuff, I mean, she's talking about her relationship with her husband and how they've been responding to the son's death. And I'm like, they could have conveyed this information in a much more interesting way with a conversation between the couple or just, non-verbal stuff in the kitchen.
We do get a lot of that, though. I mean, that's one thing I do actually like about this movie. I think there are some really smart scenes where we just get a lot from looks between the two of them, or, okay, so the main couple's son died. He drowned in the bathtub. The way we find this out is we see Thomas Jane installing grab bars in the bathtub, and like immediately we know, like, I mean, that's kind of an unusual thing to do for a couple that doesn't have a kid. Why would we do this? There are lots of little things like that, little clues as to what's going on that eventually get built upon later. I feel like those scenes in the support group don't really add anything except a layer of pretension and almost condescension.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring this up now because this is probably something that is going to keep coming back in our discussion. But one of my big complaints with this movie was just a lack of subtlety on all levels. When you're trying to communicate an idea, or especially when it's trying to communicate a theme, it just like tells you, and it tells you again. And it's like, did you get it? This is what we're doing. This is what these people are thinking.
It's kind of like the old expression. I'm a journalist, and it's kind of like the expression they tell you in journalism, particularly for TV journalism: tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you told them. This movie does a lot of that.
That's what they do. Like, if it was just he's installing the grab bars in the bathtub, fine. If it was just them like rehashing the drowning, fine. But like, you see her traumatic flashbacks, they bring it up again and again. The kid died in the bathtub, and it's like, I don't know. It just seemed like a very...
The more it went on, the more I wondered, like, do kids really die in bathtubs? I mean, it's like sit up.
Well, I don't want
like a foot of water. I mean, I don't know. It probably does happen. I'm upsetting someone right now.
It's not relevant to the movie, but it did distract me because you see a very crisp flashback of the kid dying in the bathtub, and I don't know why he died in the bathtub. He was just like flailing in the water.
Whose fault was it? That's the thing. I wanted to be able to blame someone. I wanted to be able to say Thomas Jane got drunk and wasn't watching the kid or something, and we never really get around to that, or like how...
But the kid's old. The kid's old enough to sit up in the bathtub.
Yeah.
And the water's not that deep. It's like 8-inch deep water, a foot deep water.
I mean, I guess they poured him a real deep bath that day. I don't know.
It's true, but I feel like that's also getting a little too hung up on technicality, because I didn't think about that. I was actually very caught up in the emotional journey that I was on there. I was feeling for the couple, and I was feeling for each time that they had to flash back to that traumatic event, and how it got more traumatic each time we saw it. Like, each new representation of it was sort of a new level of empathy for me, where I was like, holy fuck, that would be fucking rough to think about that for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, absolutely, the kid was big enough to sit up in the tub, but I wasn't really thinking about that.
I wouldn't have had a problem with it if they didn't insist on... I didn't need to see it played out. I was understanding the trauma of this couple just through inference. And
they use those scenes of the flashbacks almost the same way you'd use a jump scare in any other horror movie. Like, it's pure just trauma. I mean, you're pummeled with this overwhelming sound design and these images of this drowning. I'm like, once for a few seconds, okay, I get it. But to keep repeating that motif just seems cruel and honestly kind of lazy.
Well, let's talk about jump scares.
I was going to say, that's a great segue.
Because... a lot of Mike Flanagan movies have these like jump scares thrown in that are fun. Like I appreciate a jump scare, but at some point they get routine and the setup and the delivery is the same and it happens again and again and you're like, okay, oh, the jump scare is coming. Ah, there it is. And it feels like it's being done out of obligation.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say that in this movie, I was really intrigued because there were a lot of moments that could have been jump scares but weren't treated as such at all, especially the first time that the kid, what's his name?
Cody
has a dream.
Because Cody is actually Mike Flanagan's son's name.
Oh, that's weird.
It is kind of weird.
And sort of surreal things start to happen around the house. There's a mysterious sort of pale figure who shows up behind the wife in a doorway sort of suddenly, but there's no sound cue accompanying.
There's not, and it's really creepy.
It's really eerie.
That did get under my skin in a way that a normal jump scare would not.
Yeah. And there were a number of moments like that where I was like, wow, good job on not going for the jump scare and actually making it much more creepy as a result.
Yeah, okay, that happens a couple times, but do you understand what I'm saying about
No, what jump scares are you referring to in this? Because I'm not...
Everything in like the last hour of the movie where there's like creepy things happening and she investigates and then there's a jump scare delivery, especially in the last act of the movie. Lots of jump scares, lots of screaming, lots of stuff. I don't know.
It does go into just really kind of remote workman like horror bullshit for the final third. I felt the same thing. I didn't care enough at that point. I mean, my central problem in this movie is like Kate Bosworth. What? How is she? I don't understand how she's qualified to be in any film. Like, I thought she was absolutely dreadful in this, and she's the character that I most needed to empathize with.
What's her claim to fame? We went over this, I think, with Amnesiac, but like, what's the one?
Yeah, and oddly enough, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll get into the final
chestnut.
third later, but I loved the final third, and I thought Kate Bosworth was great in this. Actually.
I thought she was like,
she was fine.
She made her film debut in The Horse Whisperer and appeared in Remember the Titans before landing a lead role as a teenage surfer in the box office hit Blue Crush.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if like just the lack of emotion that was present on screen with her was like a choice, or if it's just that she doesn't know how to act. I mean, because like there's so many emotions this woman must be going through, and I never really understood how she felt about anything. In most of this movie, she just seemed kind of like a blank canvas that you could read into whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't see it that way at all. I mean, she had such drive to make that kid replace the old kid.
I didn't even sense any kind of urgency in that beyond like the plot going through the motions of making that happen. Like her performance just didn't register with me. It was just very kind of sleepy. She was always looking slightly concerned no matter what was going on around her.
I see what you mean, but it didn't bother me. I thought it was fine given the context that she's still grief wrought and kind of going through the motions as a character.
Sure. I guess I need to see her in something else other than Amnesia.
I know.
Which kind of did the same thing for me.
Yeah, it's the second movie we've seen her in, and she's just been kind of like one note, like doped up, very weird in both. So
yeah, she's got a kind of like a Stepford Wives quality to her. I felt like she was a robot through most of this movie. Just actually, that was creepier to me than most anything else that happened in this. Mm-hmm. It should be said as well. I mean, we've been talking about this movie
for a little bit. But she achieves such an emotional catharsis in this movie. Her character does, and she plays it. I mean, certainly for most of it, she is going through the motions and trying to recover from this thing that happened, but there's definitely some shit that happens later on, and she plays it.
Sure, okay.
You responded to it. I didn't.
Yeah, I did.
We should mention that this is not really a straight-up horror movie. I mean, I would say this is more in the... I want to call it a fantasy movie, but I think to really categorize it it's probably more of like a supernatural thrill, maybe a supernatural drama, even.
Yeah. That's a good way to describe it.
I think it needs to be read as such. I think that's one reason there aren't a lot of jump scares. I do think that this movie...
I thought there were a ton of jump scares. Maybe I'm wrong.
And more in the latter part of the film. I do agree with you there, but I think for the most part, the beats don't follow the usual horror beats for quite a while. I do feel like it has more in common with... I can't even think of a film to compare it to, but it does have more of kind of a fantasy vibe for quite a while.
Sort of like a Pan's Labyrinth. It's
definitely
got that Del Toro, like that kind of softy emotional side. There's there's a creature who shows up repeatedly who we haven't talked about much yet, but there's some Del Toro-y design elements even just to that creature. I mean, there are some beautiful moments in this.
Yeah, there's beautiful.
Let's talk
moments.
about. Can we talk about the butterflies?
Yeah, let's talk about the butterflies. I mean, I think that's what we're talking about. I mean,
it's supposed to be beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, first, I disagree. I think I see what you're saying. I would definitely say this is a horror movie. Like, it's the number of jump scares and just the trappings and the way things look and the concept. I don't know. I see what you're saying. It does kind of take its time and it does give itself a big serving of chicken soup for the soul. But
a bathtub size serving.
Yeah, a bathtub. Yeah, but I would say 2/3 of it is horror, and then 1/3 of it is like Hallmark movie, faith-based movie.
I could see this on Lifetime totally. If
Edited
Lifetime just
down
like
a
went
little
out
bit.
on a limb and hired some director who like had made a horror movie, this is what they would get.
Yeah, if they wanted to branch into horror programming, Before I Wake.
That's
a
a great idea.
Lifetime
We should
original
pitch that.
movie.
Well, if Netflix ever goes under, Mike Flanagan will still have work.
Yeah.
So the butterflies, though. Butterflies are a recurring motif in the movie because the kid is obsessed with butterflies, and any time that he starts to dream and his dreams manifest in the real world, sort of our first sign most times is that butterflies start to appear, and there are these glowing CG butterflies that, depending on the shot, it was sort of beautiful and magical to me, and in other shots I was just like, oh, that's so bad. The CG is so bad. One thing I did appreciate was that clearly they were just kind of playing with colored spots on the set.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I appreciate that. Just
I like that you
they
get Thomas
glow
Jane with
sometimes.
these colors around him, and
Yeah.
like you don't even see a butterfly in one shot, but you
Yeah.
know that they're kind of buzzing around him.
Yeah, I appreciated that very in the midst of these very obviously bad CG butterflies, that you could also see the practical effects that were used to create some of that on set. You
Yeah.
know, I enjoyed that.
Yeah,
There's this great shot of Thomas Jane just looking so, I mean, he's trying so hard. I can't knock him, but he looks so dopey when he's trying to catch the butterfly with the cup, and he's clearly acting against nothing. And he's just like wide-eyed, like googly with his jaw hanging open, like trying to catch this thing and moving around the room. And then they clearly had to like animate something in to follow his movements. It just looks so cheap. It's so misguided.
I thought it was beautiful. I had no problems with this movie, minus the support group being boring, for quite a long time. I was like, this is definitely on the road to View It land. And then it oscillated quite a bit. I'll keep you in suspense where it ended up.
It was only 2 other places. I mean, not that concerned about it.
Wait, it oscillated like a fan?
Yeah, it went back and it went
Vacillated,
back and
maybe?
forth.
Vacillated, I think is what you're saying.
Vacillated, whatever. Yeah, the butterfly stuff. We should mention that the kid tries, a major plot point of the movie is the kid tries to avoid sleep.
Yeah.
So, because he knows he has this power and he has these nightmares that manifest themselves too, and he doesn't want the nightmares to hurt anybody, so he has a shoebox under the bed with Kickstart, espresso beans.
Well, we had some of those before the show.
We had some of those before the show to get into the spirit.
Yeah.
And then he stays up under the sheet of his bed reading the same butterfly book, presumably for 9 hours every night.
Interesting that the butterfly book is what keeps him awake.
He knows everything about butterflies.
Everything.
And coincidentally, Kate Bosworth's character, who we still haven't figured out her name, but whatever.
Doesn't matter.
Jessie, that's right,
Yeah.
is an insomniac since the death of the first child,
Right.
Sean.
So basically, she's just the only one up at night to hear the floorboards creaking and see the Moonlight Man. Which, I don't know. Should we describe the Moonlight Man or just save that for the spoiler round?
Oh, you're calling him the Moonlight Man.
Yeah.
No, we should. I mean, he's
doesn't really
in
matter.
the movie a lot
I
before
don't have anything to really
anything.
say about him.
Oh, I do. I mean, there's a creepy creature that the kid repeatedly manifests, who he calls the Canker Man, and it's a pale, thin
Demon thing.
Yeah.
It reminded me of the Moonlight Man in Gerald's Game, is why I'm saying this. In case
Yeah, it's like a
listeners
shorter, naked Moonlight Man.
He looks like something that, like, I grew up loving Tim Burton in Nightmare Before Christmas. It looks like something like a kid who really loves, like, that sort of creepy art would draw up. And I appreciate it on an effects level as, like, okay, this is, like, to the kid, this is terrifying. To me as the viewer, is silly as hell.
Yeah.
I did not find this thing creepy. It
Oh,
did
I
look
thought it
like
was
a kid's
creepy.
drawing come to life. I feel like the way it was framed and shot just made it look so obviously like a man in a suit in a made-for-TV, like, Sci-Fi Channel original
Was
movie.
it a man in a suit? Because
That was my
like just
question.
shitty CG to me. There's a couple.
There's definitely
points.
a lot of rubber suit business going
Yeah.
on in here. Yeah, especially in, like, the classroom scene, which we'll
We
get to at
see
some
we
point.
see way too much of it.
Well, that's another problem, too. In these movies, you always kind of want to see the monster. You always kind of regret having seen it.
Right.
This movie, you have a long time to regret it.
You always, it's kind of like It Follows too. You always want to see the monster catch someone, and then you regret seeing what it does to people. It's just not as compelling.
I disagree strongly with that. I liked seeing the monster in the first place. I liked the design of the monster. I kind of like that it looks like a kid's drawing come to life because it makes sense because it sprouts
Sure.
from this kid's imagination in the first place. So I don't think that's a knock against it, but in fact works to the purpose that they're going for here. And later, I mean, we're going to talk about this in the spoiler room, but sort of the origin of this creature, it makes even more sense once you discover the origin of this creature.
My main problem
Like, if
with
we
this
hadn't
movie-
seen it as much, its origin would not make as much sense. If we hadn't seen it.
Yeah, that's true.
I suppose so.
But I don't. Yeah, and that's just a conflict of interest between me not giving a fuck about its origin and
Yeah.
Mike Flanagan wanting to give me the Hallmark message of the movie.
I'm there too. I mean, my main problem with this movie, and one reason because like on paper I appreciate, I had that thought while watching, like, oh, that looks ridiculous, but also like, oh, well, this is the kid's sort of fears, nightmares manifest, and it looks like what a kid would come up with. And my main problem with this movie is it takes itself way too fucking seriously. Like, to the point that I couldn't appreciate that it was supposed to be a kid's drawing come to life. I think of a movie like The Babadook that does that wonderfully. Obviously, it's not the kid's drawing, but it's a kid's nightmare come to life for the kid and the mother. And, like, that's a movie that's got kind of a goofy-looking menace that also manages to be terrifying at the same time. In this movie, I just saw a guy in a rubber suit with a Jack Skellington face running around, and I thought it was absurd. Though there are some cool moments before we see the reveal of the Cankerman, where the butterflies, the only decent uses of CGI in this movie, where they kind of cluster around in a dark space, and then two lights sort of form for eyes, and then it sort of bursts out of that.
Yeah,
That was cool.
That was scary.
That was cool.
Yeah.
It was a kind of like Scarecrow vision
Yeah.
Yeah.
from Batman.
You know what was almost creepier than the Cankerman at any point was pretty much any time Sean manifested from one of the dreams.
Oh yeah, we haven't even really
The dead
talked
kid.
too much about that. But yeah, the dead kid manifests.
Yeah, because
They left one
Jesse-
photo. They left one family photo of the old family.
one huge family portrait
up in the house.
for Cody to see.
The focal point of the living room.
Yeah,
Yeah, they were like, we got
no big deal. Here's our dead son.
Yeah, so Cody sees it, and then he begins, manifesting in his sleep the visage of Cody, not Cody, of Sean,
Yeah.
and Kate Bosworth just can't get enough.
And
What's great... Oh, I'm sorry, Patrick.
I was just gonna say, and whenever Sean shows up, he looks exactly like he did in the photo. He's in the same outfit and has the same weird
Frozen grin,
smile
yeah.
on his face. Very creepy. Nice performance from that kid.
They did some good stuff, especially later on, with the idea that he's manifesting things as he's able to understand them or remember them, and
Yeah.
sometimes he gets it wrong, and that's more fucked up than the Cankerman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Jessie starts realizing he can do this and taking advantage of it to have more time with her son. So she shows him home videos of the kid, and then he sort of recreates their Christmas together with Sean, and it's
Good stuff.
It's fucked up, yeah.
That's good stuff. That's
Yeah.
all great.
Yeah.
Great conflict there. Mm-hmm. You got the conflict with us versus the movie, knowing that this is going to go bad somehow, and then you got the conflict between Jess and the husband, who the husband's like, this ain't right. Dead is better.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Those are hands down the creepiest moments in the film, and it is just a kid standing at the bottom of a staircase.
Smiling the same way he did in a cute family picture,
Yeah.
you know?
When it's subtle, it's working. When it's hitting you over the head with shit,
Which is 99.9% of the movie.
exactly.
I think there's a lot of good stuff in here. I think this is again, I want to give Flanagan some credit because this was an early effort from him. He'd only made one film, maybe two. I'm not sure what Absentia is or what its release was like. I think with another pass, a little more time, this could have been a more effective film for me. Another thing I'll say is, I think if I was a parent, And I do think sometimes about adopting someday. This is a great horror movie about adoption. And their worst nightmares come to life. If I had a kid and had that bond with us,
literally worst nightmares come to life.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Then it might resonate more with me if I had that sort of paternal instinct for someone. But
the relationship between the Jess and the husband and the kid is nice. Kind of watching them form their bond and the awkwardness of when they first meet, and then them kind of growing into having a real relationship. That's great. If a little on the nose by the end of the movie. There's
sweet. Some decent character development for the leads here. When I first was introduced to the Thomas Jane character, I wrote something in my notes along the lines of, Thomas Jane looks like he's going to be a great foster dad. I think it was just something about the hair, or maybe just Thomas Jane's presence in general, where I was like, oh, this guy's going to be the problem, but he's not.
Well, he's clean cut in the family photo with Sean.
Yeah, so he's gone to seed since Sean died.
The hair's a coping mechanism.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's, I think, decent performances at the worst, decent performances from the main trio, and they all develop. I felt like I knew these people as it went along.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? This is like a discussion question first.
Yeah, sure.
A question that occurred to me as I was watching this is, what would actually happen to people who slept as little as the people in this movie do?
Yeah, that is...
Oh, they die.
Would you die?
They die of exhaustion.
Is that what happens? I don't know.
If that kid was up for... How many days can you go without sleeping before you just die?
Can you actually die from not sleeping?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I have no idea.
I've never heard that before. But yeah, it is fucking ridiculous how the kid... Presumably, if you don't fuck with him, if you don't drug him, if you don't steal his stimulants that he has in the shoebox, it seems like he would stay awake indefinitely.
And he seems fine.
He seems healthier than I am.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, the kid is eventually drugged. We haven't mentioned that, but she gets a prescription for the kid to sleep so that she can have him manifest
that
more
all kinds of
dreams
problems,
of Sean. But Kate Bosworth is an insomniac for most of the movie. And I was just like, these people should be more fucked up.
Yeah.
And then I was just wondering on a practical level, like, what would happen to you if that...
There's only one way to find out, guys.
We're going to stay up for the next week.
We're going to stay up until you hear us again on this show.
We're going to watch every horror movie on Netflix. We're not going to sleep until we finish watching every horror movie on Netflix.
We're just going to live cast
and reviewing them all.
It's a great idea. Never sleep.
We're going to be dead by, like, Human Centipede.
So yeah, that's what you got. You got a little, mostly horror movie, but with a little bit of family drama, fantasy thrown in. And I don't quite know how to feel. I still don't quite know how I feel about it. But Steve, would you cue it, view it, or screw it?
God, I should have put more thought into this. I'm going to say screw it. I think I'd go watch Gerald's Game if you're interested in Mike Flanagan. I would say, like, okay, you know what?
But they're very different movies.
They're different movies, but, oh, God. Okay, let's just start this over again. This isn't about... I'm not a fan again. It's not about the Flanagan. I would say cue it. This is a movie that's probably, if you watch a lot of horror movies, it's going to come up on Netflix. It's going to recommend it to you. I'd say watch it passively unless it really grabs you. I think it's interesting to see, like, one of the most noteworthy names in modern horror, see him back a couple of years. A movie that he didn't get a chance to have released in theaters in the US. I think it's an important stepping stone in his career. We can see how he's developed since then. And I think it is like an interesting subversion of the creepy kid movie, because I think it's very much marketed as that kind of film, and it's not what you really get when you finally sit down to watch it. Is it a great movie? No, it's got a lot of flaws. I think there are some good ideas in it. Definitely fits into the Stephen King resurgence that we've had in the past few years, because this does feel, like I said earlier in the show, like the kind of thing Stephen King would have written as a short story in the 80s or something. Cue it.
Chris, what did you think?
I'm so conflicted. This movie was a view it for a long period of its runtime. Then it became a screw it. Then it became a cue it. Then it became a screw it. I think it finally landed on cue it.
That's a wild journey you must have had watching this movie.
It was a wild journey. I was like, oh, this is great. Or, oh, this is going to get good. But
you must have felt like you were watching your child drown in a bathtub.
If the movie...
over and over and over and over again.
Too soon. But if the movie had completely botched the landing, which we'll talk about in a minute, holy fucking shit. I hated it. this might be a view it. But like I said, it's a different kind of horror movie. So I think maybe a different type of audience would appreciate this. You know, if you like the jump scares, and you want something that's a little bit more life affirming than most horror movies, you might want to see this movie.
If you're a fan of Chicken Soup for the Soul or the Hallmark Channel or Lifetime, sure, go for it.
Yeah, if you want something that has a little bit of positivity in it and isn't just like demons and everyone dies, sure, cue it.
Hey, hold on. I want to ask you a question real quick because you mentioned Cody is named after Mike Flanagan's son. Do you know anything about like when his son was born? Is this movie like a response to him being a father for the first time in his life or anything like that?
I don't know.
I wanted to do more research.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
I kind of wonder
the names are the same.
Okay.
It wouldn't surprise me though. I mean,
he softened up for a little bit before he made Gerald's Game and Origin of Evil. Okay.
One last note on Mike Flanagan. You know, I look forward to seeing him continue to mature as a director, and hopefully someone slashes his CGI budget, and hopefully someone slashes the last 10 minutes of all of his movies.
Amen.
And then it'll be great.
All right, Patrick, would you view it, cue it, screw it, or anything else you have to throw at us?
I would say view it. I certainly agree with the criticisms of the lack of subtlety in the movie, and I did have problems with the ending, like Chris alluded to, and I think you alluded to as well, Steve. But yeah, it's a different kind of horror movie. It's very emotional. It is very Stephen King-like, as you said, and one of the things I really like about King is that much as he's known for being quote-unquote the master of horror, he's a big softie, and there's this emotional, soft-hearted undercurrent to at least many of his books that I've read that I've enjoyed, and I just like that this is a big kind of softy movie in the end. And as much as I can criticize that ending that we're certainly going to talk about in the spoiler room, it just felt earnest to me, and that's how I feel about Gerald's Game to a degree, and some of Flanagan's other shit. It just feels very earnest, like he can't help just putting his heart right on his sleeve and then explaining to you exactly what his heart is and that it's on his sleeve. And I like that. I think that's sweet. And even if I'm like, okay, come on, Mike, I'm still going, all right, you're not afraid to make kind of a soft-hearted movie in a hard world. Okay, I'm going to stop pontificating now, but I enjoyed it. That was talk about fucking explaining your intentions in the most cheesy and unsubtle way possible.
I wish I could.
I just Flanagan'd that rating.
I wish I could cut the last 10 minutes from your review
and slash my CGI budget. But no, I enjoyed it a lot, and I was invested all the way through. Actually,
I was too. More
listeners can't tell, but there are glowing butterflies coming out from Patrick's hoodie right now.
You guys can't tell, but I'm glowing underneath my headphones right now. I'm kind of blushing after all that sappy shit I just spit out.
Well, if you want to see some sappy shit for yourself, dear listener, go watch Before I Wake right now on Netflix and turn this shit off. Otherwise, stay tuned for a few seconds and we'll be back in the spoiler room and we're going to tell you everything that happens and explain this epilogue that had me screaming. Stick around.
Screaming?
Oh no!
Yeah, I had a similar reaction to that moment that we're going to talk about. Jesus fucking Christ.
Welcome back to Every Horror Movie on Netflix. We're back in the spoiler room. And hey, you know what? A little shout out. Our theme song, which you just heard and we play at the beginning and end of every episode, is actually original, custom composed by who? This man, Steven.
Oh, thanks, Chris.
And
you're making me blush. And who built the spoiler room?
Gregory Allen.
Who named the spoiler room? Gregory Allen.
No, remember he built it by hand.
Gregory built it for us.
Well, listen, let's not... He'll get his own shout out someday. I think he got one last week or the week before.
We just gave him one. He just got another one.
Listen, the point is, Steve wrote the theme song. Steven wrote the theme song, and it's great.
Who wrote the theme song?
Steven.
I did.
You did.
This guy right here.
So send your fan mail to Steven, care of Every Horror Movie on Netflix, on Facebook, Twitter, email Every horror movie on Netflix.com.
Oh, hey, if you're a composer, if you make music, we could use some other tunes to kind of spruce the show up a little bit. Send them our way.
Yeah, all we'll ask is that you sign your life away.
That seems fair to me.
And that your music's not shit.
Yeah, if it's shit, we're not going to play it. We won't even message you back.
We might show
Send us good music.
Send us shitty music. We'll send you shitty music back. But yeah, so we're back in the spoiler room talking about Before I Wake, the new film from the new American master, Mike Flanagan, which is actually an old film.
I was just going to say, it's not a new movie. We've talked about that. Come on.
And yeah, so I guess we got to talk about the ending. We'll talk about the conventional part first that I didn't really have a problem with. Basically, they lose custody of Cody because he falls asleep and kills the dad. Right?
Yeah.
Or he actually gets drugged.
The canker man kills the dad.
Right. The canker man appears and consumes the dad.
Which is pretty weird the way that happens. It just looks visually pretty creepy.
He's got like snakes coming out of his eyes or something. Like,
oh, I do not remember that.
He gives him a hug.
The canker man just kind of envelops him.
Yeah.
That part. I think it's something that happens later. Okay.
Yeah. It's like he's not canker man, but condom man. And he's kind of just wrapping himself over that guy. And he's pushing and it's stretching and he gets sucked in.
That's apt.
Yeah. So, Cody goes off to live in a ward. Social worker comes back and is like, you can't have the baby anymore. They take him to the ward. And then she goes on a what's her face? Jess goes on a mystery. Mommy goes on a little mystery hunt, trying to figure out the backstory. And I don't even want to talk about that part. Do you guys want to talk about that part?
It's just we just learn what we already know. I mean, it's
yeah, she kind of goes back to the social worker files.
He's telling us what he just told us.
She interviews one of the foster parents, and it's
who's the dad from the beginning with the gun?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, a couple of little interesting details are included, but yeah, it's nothing we don't really already know.
I mean, really, the only significant thing is that she gets some evidence related to his case, and there's a stuffed butterfly in it.
Yeah.
In the evidence file, and she pulls out the stuffed butterfly.
Oh, right. Yeah, stuffed butterfly that was made by Cody's birth mother, who died long ago. Mm-hmm. So she ends up finding the ward. She's like, I gotta get him back. He's gonna fall asleep and kill some people or something. And she goes to the ward, and the ward's already been fucked. There's cocooned people everywhere. Chrysalis people.
Which I was unclear on. Who were those people?
All the people who worked in the ward.
Were they?
Yeah, the social worker is one of them, right?
Yeah, social worker was one of them, and then orderlies and stuff.
I read this though as him protecting them, right?
No, you read it that way because she stops and says, "A chrysalis is protecting them," or something.
Oh, I don't even remember that line.
Referencing when Cody explains what a chrysalis is earlier in the movie.
So now he's using his dreams. He has a little bit more agency over his dreams now, and so he's crystallizing people to keep them safe from the canker man. That's how I read it.
So I was unclear on this scene, and so I looked at the Wikipedia plot description to see how...
Always a reliable source for interpreting subtext.
But it's at least a source to interpret subtext, and that plot description said it's all the people the canker man has killed in the past.
Disagree.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
I didn't see... it wasn't clearly explained to me one way or the other.
Because you would have seen the husband.
Right.
At least.
Right.
So I reject that. I'm going to edit Wikipedia tonight and correct that and add my own interpretation. But so she's in the ward. And we got some little haunted house antics going on, right?
Yeah, because she walks along and in a pretty creepy scene, she happens upon a room that's designed like the bathtub that we've now seen multiple times in which her son died. And there's this pretty weird scene where she has to relive it again and realize that it's an illusion and not react to it and walk away from it.
Well, she walks by the room and she hears "Mommy,"
yeah,
something, and then she sees a bathtub. Now, what I wanted to happen, and I think there's a movie where this does happen, but when you're at a point where you know that you're being fed illusions of shit that is this kind of happens in a Dark Song, I guess. You know that you're being fed illusions of things that you're supposed to emotionally respond to and that are baiting you. I would have loved to see her go down the hall and hear "Mommy" and look and see a bathtub and just be like, fuck that, and just keep walking down the hallway.
Right.
There's no reason for her to go in that bathtub room and see the spooks.
Well, but I mean, she basically does that.
But we see the spooks.
It was very powerful to me that she relived it again in the most intense way we'd seen it yet, and then she realized it was a distraction and walked away
She
from
walked
it.
away from her son drowning again.
That was, yeah.
So
to me, that was powerful.
Yeah, I guess it's, support. It's thematically and powerful.
And then we see the Canker Man.
And we see the Canker Man.
You're so jaded.
Motherfucker.
You're so jaded. He runs at her, and at the last moment, she holds out the stuffed butterfly to him, embraces him, and he transforms into Cody.
Turns out, Canker Man is just a projection of Cody's frustrations and loneliness, and all he needed was a hug the whole time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I loved it.
They
I
hug
loved
the
that.
Canker Man, and he
Jesus.
morphs, and it's beautiful, and everyone gets let out of their chrysalises, and she takes the boy, and she leaves, and the social worker, who just came out of a cocoon and is still soaking wet, goes down the stairs, and she's like, "Stop!" And she's like, "I'm taking him home." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then they go home. Mm-hmm. And then at what point...
Then was when it started offending me a little bit.
Fade out. I'm taking him home. Fade out. Directed by Mike Flanagan. View it. Great.
Yeah.
Then Mike Flanagan, it's like we're eating a gourmet meal. And that Mike Flanagan comes in. He's like, "Do you like the meal that I prepared for you?" And then he just takes a snow shovel of shit. And he's like, "Here's your exposition dump." Throws it on the table.
I thought you were
the Gerald's game problem all over again.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say, like, a gourmet meal, and then Mike Flanagan's like, "You want some dessert?" And then he just throws, like, a box of Twinkies on the table.
Maybe. And, like, reads the nutrition facts to you as he does it.
I mean, I still enjoyed it. Will someone explain what we're talking about instead of talking in metaphors here?
I think Chris is the best because he's probably even more incensed by it than I am.
I'm so incensed by it. I forget how it even starts. I think they're back home. They're
back home.
Yeah, Jess and Cody are back home. Husband's still dead, and but they're back home. They're like, "Oh, I love you."
Why
and
wouldn't he be?
Well, I don't know, because a lot of shit got undone with the Canker Man, but they're having a happy life even though husband just died, and I don't know. But they're in bed, and she's like, "Okay, hey, look, I found all these files on your birth mother," and she just lays out in excruciating detail every page of this journal she found that the mother wrote, the birth mother. The birth mother had cancer. And turns out the Canker Man is actually the Cancer Man. Because that's how the young boy read the medical sheet.
She says to him something along the lines of, "I know cancer can be a hard thing for children to understand, and you..." Yeah. I mean, it's very exposition heavy. It's
very exposition. She's saying all this stuff to the kid in flowery language. Half of this stuff, I'm not sure she really has reason to know based on the file, but it's like, her body started to change. She knew she had to hold on to you as long as she could. That kind of thing. And then the worst part of it is, so the Canker Man's catchphrase is, "I'll never leave you," or something like that. And it's a menacing thing, right? The whole movie. And the kid's like, "He said he'd never leave me alone, blah, blah, blah." Turns out, when birth mom was dying of cancer, Cody came in the room to say goodbye one last time, and saw the mother, who looks like the Canker Man because she's all wasted away from cancer.
Wait, can we talk about how way over the top her makeup is too?
It's ridiculous.
Her eyes are like piss yellow. Her head looks like it's ballooned twice its normal size. It's just, I mean, I know it's sad she's dying of cancer, but I don't think that's what people dying of cancer really look like. I mean, it just looks absurd.
No, she should have looked like Steve Jobs. And then Steve Jobs should have been creeping around snatching people this whole movie. That'd be scary.
Why don't you remake it, Chris?
I should. There aren't enough movies about Steve Jobs. Yeah, so she's there, like, ghoulishly, comically ghoulish. Like, it's not even touching because she's so comically ghoulish. And
it
so
was touching to me. I was touched.
Okay. So comically reminiscent of the Moonlight Man, too. And she's like, "I'll always be with you."
Oh, you guys are assholes.
No, I laughed when I saw the scene. I'm laughing even harder now.
I didn't laugh at all. I was moved.
So fucking sappy.
I was at the same time able to hold the concept that yes, it was over the top, while also feeling a lot for those characters.
You're so talented, Patrick.
Look, the idea is fine.
I've trained my mind.
You have two things. You can hold two things at one time.
Yes, exactly.
Like, the idea is fine. The fact that, like, this is all the horrors that we've seen have been a young boy's subconscious trying to process all his grief and previous traumas and stuff. That's all good stuff.
Not bad idea, just so done in such a heavy-handed manner.
Right, exactly. Like, leave some stuff to our imagination.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that sentiment. I just, at the same time, it's like what I said before. I appreciate the earnestness. You know, Flanagan is so sincere about what he's doing, and he can't help really, really making sure that you understand what he's doing.
Right.
Sure.
I would absolutely embrace this same movie done in a more subtle way. Yeah. It would be better done in a more subtle way, but I'm willing to forgive it the over the topness.
And Steve and I just might be cynical assholes, I guess.
I'm a recovering cynic. I'm like in Cynics Anonymous.
But I still read this as almost being camp.
It's certainly not intended as camp.
No, it's not intended as camp, but I mean, that's kind of what camp is. It's like so sincere that it's ridiculous.
Oh, and then after that, I'm already screaming. I'm already screaming at the visual nightmare I've just seen and the cringe of this story. We cut back to Jess and Cody in bed again, and he's like, "Can you read me a bedtime story?" And she's like, "Here's a story about a mom who wanted a son and a son who needed a mom and blah blah, and they all lived happily ever after." And then the boy's like, "Good night, Mom." And then, of course, he visualizes a butterfly while he's awake, because now he has superpowers.
Yeah, he's learning to control it.
Yeah, so I guess it kind of leaves the door open to maybe he'll imagine all the people he killed coming back to life, and they'll come back to life somehow.
Oh, I can't wait for Before I Wake, too.
After I wake.
After I wake.
After I woke.
Oh, man.
I don't know. I was screaming.
I was screaming, too, but it was inside, and the screams came out of my eyes in liquid form.
It was just so uncannily similar to the ending of Gerald's Game, where, in case our listeners
there are definite parallels there.
The ending of Gerald's Game is basically the crisis is resolved, and then there's a voiceover narration explaining every little detail of the backstory of a relatively minor character and all the crimes he committed and everything that got him to this point, and all of his physical deformities are explained medically and like.
Well, and more importantly, I think the parallel between the two there's Flanagan and his co-writers in both cases feel the need to wrap up the protagonist's narrative and assure you that character is going to be okay, that this is a happy ending for that character.
Right.
Which is another thing that I just find kind of sweet. That he's so dedicated to making sure that you know these characters are going to be okay.
It's not like...
which also reminds me of King again. That's another Stephen King thing, where like even fucking It, known for scary clown and whatever, the last couple chapters of It are all just about like sweet childhood nostalgia. Layered on thick with a thick fucking knife.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than having these.
I appreciate that. I think it's sweet. It's just not my bag. I mean, I like my horror with teeth.
But there's also a lot of shitty horror movies that feel obligated to have like an edgy ending, where it's like, oh, you thought they were okay? No, they're still in the demon world. Ah.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, and I'm not.
And this is
and
I'm not could have gone that way.
And I'm not holding this to the standards of a horror movie. I'm just talking about if I liked it as a movie, not necessarily, is it what I want out of a horror movie necessarily? I don't know. I'd have to think about that more, but I enjoyed it as a movie. I'm not
A film?
Not as a particular genre of movie. Yes, I enjoyed it as an film for sure.
All right.
Yeah, with a capital F. No, I'm overdoing it a little bit at this point, but yeah. I mean, I've said this 1,000 times already. I agree with the criticism that it's unsubtle, but I'll forgive it that.
So unsubtle.
This almost feels like a Marvel movie in a lot of ways, or like a prequel to a Marvel movie.
How so? Oh,
the kid with the
like he's
mutant
going to
powers?
grow up to be a superhero. Okay,
Yeah, this feels like an origin story for a Marvel character that I don't give a shit about.
I could see that.
That's my final statement on this movie.
It feels like an origin story for the next Marvel movie I'd be super stoked about.
All right.
Cankerman's going to show up in a post-credit scene in the near future. It's going to be great. There's going to be some secret agents, and they're going to be opening a locked briefcase, and there's going to be a little butterfly doll. Like, oh shit, better call somebody. All right, well, that's all we got to say about that movie, for better or worse.
Yeah, and we'll be here when Flanagan fucks up Haunting of Hill House in a few months here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody know?
Hopefully we'll still be here.
Does anyone know what we're watching next time?
Fuck no.
We're watching Baskin. We're back to the alphabet, where, I mean, we kind of are still in... Before I Wake was scheduled to be like 3 episodes from now, but we did it now. And now we're back on track. BA for Baskin.
Which,
Like Baskin Robbins?
Like Baskin Robbins, we're going to have 54 flavors.
How many flavors are in Baskin Robbins?
54, right?
Is it 54?
56?
no, 31. It's like in the logo. 30. It's 30 something.
We're going to ask Google.
32. 32
Hey, Google,
flavors.
how many flavors does Baskin Robbins have?
31 flavors.
31. Yes.
For the win.
Got it.
That'll be on
think-
HQ Trivia tomorrow night.
I recently learned though that Baskin is a Turkish film. I think it's a foreign film.
Oh,
so
I can't
I'm
wait.
thinking. I'm thinking we may be butchering the pronunciation of the title.
Well, join us in 2 weeks. We're going to be watching and talking about Baskin. Hope to see you then. In the meantime, check us out on everyhorrormovieonnetflix.com or leave us a little message on Facebook or Twitter. Tell us what you're thinking of the show, and as always, leave us a review. We love them.
What if they troll us?
Yeah. What if we want to troll us?
If someone wants to troll us, we might troll them back. And you know what? I'm not proud.
Oh, we might.
Well, we probably will. I don't want to admit this, but I've been going down a dark hole of like arguing with strangers on Twitter lately.
Ugh.
And I just like went back to like delete some of those tweets because we don't need it out there. But my kill rate is fucking high.
Oh wait, arguing with people from the Every Horror Movie on Netflix account?
Just
Oh, your
strangers.
personal account.
But I would love to argue with some listeners.
Okay.
And be savage to them as well. But like I go back and like I look at like what I wrote and then like what I responded to, and that user is like been suspended or has blocked me or has deleted their tweets or has protected their account, and it's like, wow.
So did you kill them or did they kill you though? If they blocked you.
Yeah, who
don't
really
know.
dies in that scenario?
We're definitely on each other's kill list, though. That's all I got.
Cue the music.
All right. Well, for Every Horror Movie on Netflix, I'm Chris.
I'm Jay because I want to hear that sound cue before the end of the episode too.
I'm Ben Wheatley, director of Kill List. Thanks for listening.
God damn you, Steve. Goodbye, everybody.